G'day guys, it's Richard here again. Now, I often get a lot of people asking me, how do you light your group shots at night? And most of the time when there's people involved in a shot, I use flash rather than light painting techniques. There's a reason for that, and I'll go into that in a minute. But here I am at a location of one of our more recent group photo shoots, and I just thought I'd run you through the setup and the equipment that I use. So let's have a bit of a look at it now. Alright, so I use a pretty typical, I guess you'd call 3-point lighting setup, and I'm using these really budget brand flashes, and I'm going to use them off camera, and they're controlled by these little cheap Yongnuo flash triggers. They're an RF603N, that's a Nikon version. They're available for other brands of cameras as well. And basically I just put that on the light stand like so, click it on there, then I get a trusty umbrella. You can't beat the umbrella. Cheap and easy, no problem at all. Stick that in the umbrella holder like that. Point the flash into the umbrella like so. Okay, now these have to go up pretty high, so let's just put them up about there, roughly. My camera is just here. I'm going to do the same on the other side, so I've got a light on both sides. So we do exactly the same on the other side. Got our flash trigger here. Umbrella up, lift it up high, watch out for the tree, and tighten it up. One thing to be very aware of with these umbrellas is if it's a windy day, they're going to go. Alright, now our 3-point lighting setup wouldn't be complete without a third light. So here we are on a light stand. This is a Yongnuo flash. It's got a built-in trigger which works with the rest of them. I'm just going to put it back here in the bush, just down there, something like that, just poking over the top of there, because when our people line up at the front of that railing, this is going to give them a nice separation from the background. Okay, now to make sure I get a good spread of light around the background here, I've got yet another light. So now we're into a 4-point lighting setup, another cheap light with a same frequency flash trigger as the others. All I'm going to do is gently place it here on that piece of wood, and the idea of this is to light up the side of the shed and give it a nice backlight so that the corrugations of the iron, that real shadowy look, and it'll look great. Now just one more for this particular shot. I actually put another light flash on the same frequency as all of the others, and I placed it inside the shearing shed, and simply just to give a little bit of interior detail to the shot. So I'll just put that in there now. Okay, so all of our lights are set to go. You're probably wondering how I'm going to trigger them all. Well, the way I've got it set up, I've got my Nikon D750. You'll notice there's a flash trigger on the top, on the hot shoe. There's also a flash trigger down sitting on the tripod, which is connected via the cable to the auxiliary in of the camera. Okay, so it sort of gets a little bit complicated, and I want you to listen very carefully. In my pocket, I have yet another flash trigger. These are all exactly the same brand, same make, same model. Some of them are set to transmit, some of them are set to receive. So the way I work it out, and this is the key element of the whole image, I'm going to do a 20-second exposure, basically to get the background ambient light situation. So if we had a starry night or a cloudy, sort of broody night, the 20 seconds is required to get those stars or to get that cloudy sort of view to come out. The flashes themselves will freeze the subjects. So in other words, all of the people lined up along this fence are going to be frozen by the flashes, and they'll all go off at the same time. But the key to doing this type of exposure is to use rear curtain sync on your flashes. What that means is that when you press the shutter, which I do remotely here, opens the shutter on the camera. The shutter is open for 20 seconds, and right at that split second where the shutter's closing, all the flashes go off. And that is the key to getting the frozen faces and the beautiful backlight on the people. Even though in the first 20 seconds they may be moving just slightly, that's not really noticeable because they're frozen at the end of the exposure. Now, I've got some really bad news for Canon users. Their implementation of rear curtain sync is very, very difficult. For example, these cheap Yongnuo or any off-brand triggers don't do rear curtain sync on Canon cameras. There might be a few that do, but the 5D Mark II, Mark III, 7D, and the very common cameras, they make it really difficult. Thankfully, I'm a Nikon shooter with the D750, D800, D810, D600 series, and all the others. It's just a menu setting. Very, very easy to achieve. So, if you're a Canon shooter or a shooter of a camera that doesn't enable an easy rear curtain flash system, there's a really simple way around that. And all you have to do is start the camera rolling and count. When you get to about 18, press the flash manually. The flashes will expose. You've got maybe a second or two after that, depending on how accurate your counting is. Now, I've used this method many times and it actually does work. It's not as smooth, not as automated as what I'd like, but we have to get around these things, and there's always a way of doing it. So that's my solution. Okay, so you can see the settings I had on the camera here was set to f4. There's a 20-second exposure, ISO of 800. I set the ISO at 800 simply because it's not too high, but I needed to capture some background ambience, so I've got to set the ISO a little bit higher. If I wasn't worried about that, I'd probably be at about 200 or 400, but it's always a bit of a trade-off in these nighttime scenes. So there you have it. That's how I did the off-camera flash setup. That's how I took the photo that you see here, and we do a lot of this sort of stuff on our workshops, and it's a lot of fun setting it up. By the way, I broke a couple of umbrellas in the shoot, but you know, that's the price you pay sometimes. You got to weigh them down and make sure they don't blow away when the wind gets up. Okay, all the best, and we'll see you next time.